It's draft day. It's a holiday to me. I'm freaking excited. The draft is tonight. Look, I love it. I love the NFL draft. I love college football. I love the NFL. I love football. I love great stories. I like people making their dreams. All of that happens at the NFL draft. It's a very fun thing to talk about. I tried not to shove it down your guys' throat. Over the last couple months, I could have talked about the draft every single video if I wanted to. It wouldn't have all been about the Georgia Bulldogs if I did that, though. I'm here to talk to you about where I think Georgia players are going to get drafted tonight in the 2024 NFL draft. 11, 12, 13 guys, that's where they can max out. I think that the realistic number is more around 8 or 9 of players that may get drafted. But let's talk about it, all right? And I won't spend too much time on the most obvious one, which is Brock Bowers, right? This guy is, I would say, the only Georgia player that is a lock to go first round. Lock. Book it. Bowers is a first rounder. Should be a top 10 pick. That might not happen, but Jets at 10. If the Chargers were to trade back, I think I could see them trading back and taking Bowers in the early teens, 11, 12, if they end up with that. You got to look at you have to look at what the draft order is and see, well, hey, in the top 10, a couple quarterbacks are going to go off the board. So Bowers isn't going in the top few picks. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get taken ahead of Brock Bowers. The range where Brock it really starts is 5. If the Patriots aren't trading, if the Vikings aren't trading, if the Broncos aren't trading around with these picks, if the Giants aren't trading up, I think you can start to consider Brock Bowers at 5. Where does he realistically fall? It could be New York at 6. It could be Tennessee at 7. I don't think it'd be Atlanta at 8. I don't think it would be... The Bears could take him at 9, although I'm not going to predict that. 10 to the Jets seems realistic. Here's what I'll say about Brock, and I'll end it here. He's not getting past 14 or 15, New Orleans or Indianapolis. Absolutely ridiculous if he doesn't. Next up, there's 2 other players, 3, I'm going to say 3 guys out of this Georgia Bulldog roster that could end up being first-round picks outside of Brock Bowers. I don't know about 2 of them. I do think Amarius Mims ends up being a first-round pick. We are talking about a 6'7", 340-pound offensive tackle that never let up a snap or never let up a sack, right? Obviously, over the course of 3 seasons at Georgia, didn't play a lot. 8 career starts, 2 of them being in postseason, 5 or 6 starts this season. Doesn't finish out the year, deals with an ankle injury, has to get tightrope surgery, the same that Brock Bowers did, struggles to come back. We get it. Big dude, athletic guy, can run about 20 miles per hour. Imagine 6'7", 340 pounds running that fast at you, right? An offensive lineman isn't going to run like that necessarily, and that's not how you evaluate them. But Amarius Mims the sky is the limit. A lot of people in this draft circle believe he has the most potential out of all the tackles. He's not going to be the first tackle taken off the board, and he might slip a little bit because this is one of the deeper offensive tackle classes, and it's the same reason why Ladd McConkey is probably not going to be a first-round pick, even though I've seen him mocked at the end to a Kansas City or a San Francisco, Super Bowl contending teams that could use that extra ounce, right? That extra ounce. And McConkey can be that extra ounce for people, but this is a deep wide receiver class. When you talk about Odunze, Neighbors, and Harrison as your top 3, not in that order, you talk about Brian Thomas, you talk about A.D. Mitchell, former Dawg, another guy. I think he could be a first rounder, might be a second rounder. Same concept with Ladd McConkey. I do think AD will go ahead of Ladd. All right, so we could talk about AD for a second since he's a former Dawg, 2-time champion, big-time contested catch and clutch catch guy. AD Mitchell is going to go towards the back end of the first round if I had to guess. Ladd could, but I have a second-round grade on Ladd McConkey. I just think there are too many good wide receivers in this class. He's not your number 1 outside X receiver, and that's what people want usually. Towards the top end, you usually get your gadget guys, your slot guys, your Z's and your Y's later on, if you look throughout history. So I think he's a second-round pick. Not because of the talent, just because of the circumstances. There's Xavier Legette, there's Jermaine Burton, there's Ricky Pearsall, there's Roman Wilson, right? There's all sorts of talent that's going to go, And some of them are worthy of first-round picks, but they're not going to be first-round picks. And I think Ladd's going to fall into that category. Second-round guy to me. Kamari Lassiter. Let's talk about Kamari. Dawg. There's a couple guys on here. I'm just going to call him a dog. NFL GMs. I'm going to tell you a quick story about Kamari Lassiter because I know that 4.66 or 4.65 or whatever it is that he ran is not fast enough for you. And I know that maybe it concerns you he didn't have any picks. He also didn't, only allowed 1 touchdown in 3 years. He's also one of the best tackling corners I've ever seen in my life. He also brings some of the most leadership and energy out of a defensive back that I've ever seen. All right, and Kamari Lassiter, here's a story I'll tell you. Go watch the Ole Miss game back. It's in the second half. I believe it's in the third quarter, but it could be in the fourth. It's probably in the fourth. Kamari Lassiter gets hurt. All right, he's on the far side from me, so he was hurt right around the 25, 30-yard line on the away sideline, heading towards the east end zone. So look for that moment. He's hurt. He's on the ground for a couple minutes, really. Training staff attends to him. He gets up, and he starts bam, 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 boom, boom. Get that at the red zone, by the way. Boom, boom. He's doing that to his head like he just tackled somebody. Like he just lit somebody up. Dude celebrated getting up from an injury. An unserious injury. And the crowd erupted. You get that kind of energy when you get Kamari Lassiter, which is why I think he should be considered in the first round. Ultimately, I think Kamari Lassiter ends up being a second-round pick just because of the measurables and the lack of production. All right, rings are production. Moving on to Javon Bullard, a guy that could slip to the third round, unbeknownst to me. I don't get it, right? I don't know why Javon Bullard might be slipping to the third round, but he seems to be. Think he might go in the second round. I would take him in the second round if it was me. I think that he's a dog, just like Kamari Lassiter. I don't just mean that literally with Georgia, just a straight-up football dog. This is a guy that 3-star Milledgeville, appears on Georgia's roster, fights for a starting spot in year 2, and is a menace in the moments that he can be. Got in trouble, moved on from it like that. You didn't hear a single word about it. There was no drama, right? He can play multiple positions in the defensive back room, which is something GMs, coaches want, need. You need a guy that can play, to me, 3 different positions. Slot corner, strong safety, free safety. Right? Javon Bullard can do all of those things for you. NFL guys. Let's talk about Tyke Smith, the other safety, because he's a little bit, look, he ran around the same 40 time. A little bit shorter. His game speed doesn't seem as fast. His instincts are maybe not as good, but this is a guy that was productive, interception leader, racks up tackles. Same thing as Javon Bullard, can play multiple positions in that defensive back room. Tyke Smith, I think, goes around 3 or 4, if I had to guess, because I don't think that there's that much separation. Really, Javon Bullard might just be more fun to watch. So, I'm being dead serious. So Tyke Smith, I think, is a 3rd or a 4th rounder. Cedric Van Pran, I'm having a hard time predict this one, but I think I'm going to guess 3rd, in the 3 to 5 range. His measurables aren't freaky when you compare him to the other interior offensive linemen in this draft, and there's some that are viewed as really good, like a Jackson Powers Johnson, right? Cedric Van Pran's not viewed that way. What's the case for Cedric Van Pran? The stability and the leadership. 44 consecutive starts, not allowing very many sacks over the course of that time, winning national championships, being voted a leader multiple years. Doesn't happen that much in college football. That's what you get out of Cedric Van Pran. So all of those guys, I think, are 100% getting drafted. So that was Brock, Amarius Mims, Ladd, Kamari, Javon Bullard, Tyke Smith, Cedric Van Pran. I think those 7 for sure get drafted. Here are the ones I'm not 100% sure about. The running backs, Kendall Milton and Daijun Edwards. The injury thing is not going to help them. The 40 times are not going to help them, right? Running in the 4.6s. And just kind of the lack of dominance is not going to help them. This is viewed as a weak running back draft, which is going to help them. That is one of the things that they have going for them. Daijun Edwards, 5'10", 200. There's plenty of running backs in the NFL that are small, but he doesn't have that breakaway speed. You only saw him break away a long run really twice in his Georgia career. I'm thinking about one play against Vanderbilt this past year. I can't think of another one, but I know there's one more in there. So he doesn't have that breakaway speed. He's a change of pace back. He's a guy that can come in. We called him the closer, right? If he's just coming in and getting 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 3, 4 yards, boom, 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 at the end of a game, he's the closer. He can do that for you. He can break tackles, not a burner. Kendall Milton, huge, right? If he ran a 4.4 something, we're talking about him being a second-round pick. That's what we're talking about with Kendall Milton. But there's injury history that's not great. Can't stay on the field. But when he does, it's really good. And you saw that at the end of 2023 when he finally started to take over as a lead back for Georgia. And he was racking up 100-yard games and multiple touchdown games and breaking all these tackles. He doesn't have side-to-side speed. He's not a great pass catcher. He's not a burner. And those are the things, along with his health, that are ultimately going to pull him down. I think Milton gets drafted. I don't know about Edwards. I do think Milton probably is a 6th or 7th round pick if I had to guess. Edwards, I think, will go undrafted if I'm predicting right now, but chalk him up as a 6 or 7, maybe. It's hard to predict the 6 and 7s. Another one's Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint. I just think there's a ton of wide receivers in this draft class. Not a lot of them have his hands, so I do think that's going to land him getting drafted. Mark him as a late pick. I've got him marked as a late pick in my book. A couple defensive guys. I'm just not sure. I don't think Tramel Wathauer is going to get drafted. No hate to Tramel Wathauer. Went out there, did his job, started games for Georgia, set the edge for Georgia, was in the backfield a lot for Georgia, and he was practically invisible to people. I literally asked 20 Georgia fans, and not a single one knew who Tramel Wathauer was. And it honestly ticked me off a little bit. Casuals. Make sure you're signing up for our newsletter, by the way. It's in the link in the description of our bio. I do want to talk about the draft more than pumping out the newsletter, to be honest with you. William Mote, long snapper. Can't predict that. I'm sorry. Just can't. I don't know. Zion Logue is the last guy. Size, length, strength, no production. That's the problem. No production, and played with a ton of really good players and was outshined pretty much the entire time over the course of his 4 years. So, look, you're not going to like some of the things I have to say, but when it comes to the draft and when it comes to, honestly, really anything college football in the NFL, I like to be unbiased. I like to be truthful. That is my truth in terms of the NFL draft and the Georgia Bulldogs. There is your preview, what I think is going to happen. I didn't even introduce myself. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talked about the draft. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you listening to me yap.